The 26th of August 2023, you're very welcome back to Read Through Education, Not Fake News on electricity prices. I saw an article in the Irish Times and I read it this morning, and when I went to go back into it, it's a paywall. They want you to subscribe so that we are treated to their lies on energy. And I want to explain to you why the lies are coming out or where they're originating from. I'll be sending a copy of this video to one person who's Maureen A Lynch. Maureen A Lynch. And needless to say, I want to meet Maureen A Lynch. Now, she's in the ESRI, the Economic and Social Research Institute. Now, there was another man there, Fitzgerald. You see, John Fitzgerald, he's the son of the late Gareth Fitzgerald, the Taoiseach, and I met him and had it out with him, and he could not answer any of the allegations I make. And I want to briefly explain why these lies are being peddled out to the people. Now, according to our Irish Times report, which I read, Dr. Maureen A Lynch said that without renewable energy, mainly wind energy in Ireland, electricity prices would be more expensive. And there is also a statement from the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, that he may have to impose a windfall tax on energy companies, because as they make bigger profits due to the fuel prices, oil, coal and gas, they are overcharging and making too big a profits. Now, any logical, rational person will immediately wonder why an increase in the fossil fuel price due to the Ukraine war and all that's going on with the shortage of fuel and increased prices should amount to increased profits for the energy companies supplying electricity wholesale into the market, and the distribution of it by various companies as well. So if you take it, the ESB is both a producer and a supplier. Energia, I think, maybe only a supplier, and there's a few that are both, and some of them are just one of each. It doesn't really matter. All the electricity produced in Ireland is supplied into a hub, into a central grid, and distributed out to consumers. There's the wholesale price and there's the retail price, which we as consumer pays. Now we take the first issue, the first point made by Dr. Maureen A Lynch, which I am now calling on her to retract. And that is that without renewable energy, electricity prices would be higher. The deal under the Irish REFIT, Renewable Energy Feed-in Tariff Scheme, and I'm shouting here because there are complaints that have not been heard. People cannot hear me. Maybe my equipment isn't just state of the art. That without renewable energy, prices for retail electricity would be more expensive, and wholesale. Now, in the REFIT scheme in 2010, the deal was done by the government at the request of the wind energy companies that they would be paid a floor price, a guaranteed price of about 76 cents a unit, 7.6 cents a unit, or 76 euros per megawatt hour, as the wholesale price is calculated in megawatts hours. The retail price is calculated on units, which is kilowatt hours. Okay, now, as the guaranteed price was being set at 69.5 roughly, with a bit extra, 76 euros per megawatt hour, fair enough. That meant that no matter how lower the fossil fuel price went, even if it went down to 20, the wind energy companies got the guaranteed floor price of 76. I'm not having an issue with that as such. But here is what is being kept from consumers. Here is where the great lie is being perpetrated by the Irish Times, who quote the likes of the ESRI as justification. When they set the REFIT price, they also decided that the wind energy companies would get the highest price for any fossil fuel used to generate electricity. So, as an example, which I've given before, if coal were 50 euros per megawatt hour. If oil was 70 euros per megawatt hour and gas was 1,000 euros per megawatt hour, then the wind energy company gets the 1,000 euros per megawatt hour. If we give another example, we'll say that the most of the grid was gas and gas was 100 euros per megawatt hour. The most of the grid, another bit of it was oil, and oil was 150 euros a megawatt hour. But we'll say that coal became very expensive and it was 1,000 euros per megawatt hour. And only one lump of coal was burned in the whole year. The wind energy companies would have to get 1,000 euros per megawatt hour. They have to get the price of the highest fossil fuel used to generate electricity. And this is part of a bill called the Task Force on Renewable Energy Bill, currently going through the Dáil, and the government did not deny this. So first of all, in 2010, when the refit price was struck, Eamon Ryan and his predecessors lied by saying that wind energy would bring down the cost of electricity, when in fact wind energy gets the price of the highest fossil fuel available. And when the wind energy managed to persuade the government to do this, and it wasn't very hard to do so, there were members of the Dáil cabinet at that time who went on to work for wind energy companies. Senior members of the Dáil, of the government, went on to work for renewable energy companies. I can't say why they made the decision they made, but they certainly had that incentive. Okay, now just to get this right again, the wind energy gets the wholesale price equal to the highest fossil fuel that is used in the grid, even though that fossil fuel might only be 1 tonne of coal in the year. Once it's used, that's what they have to get. So therefore the claim that wind energy brings down the cost of electricity is a lie. It's a barefaced lie. Barefaced lie. In the media, in the Irish Times. And the ESRI is promoting this lie. It is a lie to say if we had no wind energy, the cost of electricity would be dearer. It wouldn't, because we have no wind energy at least 75% of the time anyway. And even if we had no windmills at all, the price of electricity would be based on the average price of the fuel. So if gas was 300, coal was 200, and oil was 100, and equal amounts of all were used, the price would be based on 200, which would be the average. It would be the average of the prices. But that's not what the wind energy gets. The wind energy gets the highest price, which is 300. Now, I saw an earlier report in the Times that they expect that wind energy will be getting 336 euros on average this year, and that increases their profit. Now, again, a lot of these articles are in a paywall, but you would expect that as the price of fuel comes down, that the price of electricity would come down. And the Taoiseach has promised to even impose a windfall tax, which would be to pull down the price that he put up in the first place. To pull down the price that he put up in the first place. How ridiculous can that be? How ridiculous can that be? Probably what Dr. Maureen A Lynch is trying to shove over is that if you count the cost of climate change, well, that's all different. If you count the impact of oil, coal and gas on the environment, well then wind is cheaper. If you believe that baloney, well, that's all right. This woman has a degree. Where did she get it? Did she do mathematics? That's what they're trying to shove. And that's what's being shoved by Radio Television, not my channel. And look what the crookedness and the corruption that's going on there with their barter accounts. Folks, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. RTE broadcast a report on the 14th of February 2023 saying that the absence of wind in 2022 meant electricity prices was higher. That is a lie, because wind energy is the highest price there is. I made a complaint. It's toing and froing, and what else would you expect? I don't know where it is at the minute. I don't know what's happening at RTE. Face it down, and the regulators dealing with it, we'll see. But they knew damn bloody well that if they said it again, I was on the house again, and I was on the house in a more particular way. They changed the whole Broadcasting Standards Authority on the 15th of March 2023, which left things a bit complicated. I'm not making a big issue of that. That's what happens. There are changes, making no issue. But they know I'm watching them now. There's a new regulator in place again. He'll probably do nothing, but that's not the point. He'll be made face this. I have people watching RTE television, not the radio, but television, and they have never once, since I made that complaint, tried to say that wind energy brings down the price of electricity, because they know I will be after them. They know I will be after them. The lying, dirty beggars. That's what they are. We'll not accept it. We'll keep after them like rats in a stone ditch. And I call on the ESRI to stop these lies. If you're going to include climate change and economic degradation in the equation to say that wind energy is actually cheaper, then you have to count 50,000 trout killed in the Derrybrine wind farm in Galway. You have an improper planning application granted. You have to count the killing of birds by wind farms. You have to count the degradation of the environment with chemicals getting into watercourses and all of that. You have to count the whole lot. And you have to count what actually wind energy does to reduce the amount of fossil fuel. And I say wind energy is a net consumer of fossil fuel electricity. No SEA was done under Article 3.2 of the SEA directive, and I, along with a few others, have them strictly caught on that. We have them backed into a corner on that. And last week, a fisherman down in Wicklow won a case where Ryan, the Minister for Energy, tried to grant a foreshore licence, bypassing the whole SEA and EIA and Habitats Directive, and the court sided with this man. Great for him. This is the reality, and this is the lie, the propaganda that they're getting away with, and none worse than the Irish Times, a so-called newspaper of record, to lie and print the lies and never let anyone else have a say. The fact is, Tara Mines has closed partly due to excessive power prices. The fact of the matter is that the Taoiseach is saying nobody will be cut off from electricity. What kind of electricity service is it when heaps of them can get away with paying nothing? What kind of electricity service is that? There's huge arrears. And the rest of the suppliers, rest of the people who do pay their bills are getting caught for the cost. Pubs, restaurants are closing all over the place because they can't afford to pay the massive bills, which are up to 30,000 for 2 months in some places. That's what I have heard. But we know it's at least 10,000 in many places. Now, all we can do is call out these dirty, rotten liars and go after the so-called educated people who are lying about this. It's up to them to put the situation clear and set out their facts and figures. Because I'm not having it from them. And that's that. Folks, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We give them tally-ho. There are some villains. When you see what chance we had dealing with RTE, trying to get our case across, and the corruption that was going on there, and that old silly idiot Dee Forbes gone and won't come back. They had Catherine Sapone advising about climate change. She humped off to America and won't come back to answer anything. And then RT is looking for a €25 million bailout to peddle the lies and keep peddling the lies. Who appointed Dee Forbes? And who appointed the fella on the Board Canola Imagine appealing to that fella that got jail for corruption. That's the level of corruption there is. Folks, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We'll see you back for something else soon. Thank you.